What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Johnny Mack here. Just wanted to give you a heads up that if you are looking for a community that is open to discussion as far as mentorship, conservation, the wild, becoming a better person, and all of that, there is a group for you on Facebook, and it is called Soul Seekers. Soul Seekers, we are all about making ourselves a better person. We're all about making sure hunting lasts for generations to come and encouraging people to get plugged in. Whether you are someone who has something to give or someone who needs to soak it up like a sponge, this is a community for you, and I strongly encourage you that if you're on Facebook to join Soul Seekers, and if you're not on Facebook, hop on there just for that group. It is only going to be as powerful as we all make it. And so just remember that life happens for you, it doesn't happen to you, and that you can't outgive good. You can't outgive good, people. I want you to understand that, and I want you to believe it, because when we believe that and we lead with courage and we lead with intention, lives are changed, lives are transformed, just like on this podcast, transformation through primal adventure. Be blessed. Enjoy this episode. Talk soon. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I am your host, Johnny Mack. Through this podcast, I am on a mission to transform lives through primal adventure and to spread my mission of mentorship as conservation. This podcast is powered by Washington Backcountry, a resource for all hunters new and old. To find out more about Washington Backcountry, go to wabackcountry.com or search for Washington Backcountry on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The Soulful Hunter Podcast is also proudly presented by the Crazy Elk Company. Based out of the state of Washington with products made in America, they are providing solutions with gear to problems you didn't even know you had. Their tag wallet is one of those solutions, and I had the pleasure of using it on all of my hunts this last year, and it is now a mainstay in my kill kit. The tag wallet is a water-resistant zippered pouch that comes with its own reusable zip ties to safely and securely store your notch tag for quick and easy access. For more information, go to crazyelkcompany.com and use the code SOULFUL with a capital S to save 20% at checkout. Be blessed, everyone, and as always, stay soulful. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soulful Hunter Podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Mack, and today I am joined by Matthew Klope of Whidbey Island Taxidermy, and he is just an awesome individual and someone who I took my very first pintail the very first time I ever went duck hunting. I was like, who's the duck person to go to around here? And everyone was like, Matt over at Whidbey Island. And so talked to Matt, just really hit it off. Great individual. And now, if you guys have already heard our first taxidermy episode, this is going to be a little bit more of a follow-up because we've had some questions and some things that wanted to get covered that weren't necessarily covered in that first episode. So, Matthew, thank you so much for coming on and joining us.
Oh, you're very welcome. My pleasure.
It is always so much fun to make these connections. You never know, I'm sure, who's going to walk in your shop. But then at the same time, you never know where these relationships are going to go and end up. And here we are recording a podcast, which is pretty special.
Yeah, I've met people from all walks of life. It really, because here on North Whidbey, we have the Naval Air Station. So I'm mounting ducks for guys from all over the country. And when they transfer, I still get emails from them about their duck hunting adventures in Georgia or California. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Okay, so Matthew, where did you get your love for taxidermy? How did it all start? Because this is a lost trade.
It's kind of funny because I had a Schwinn Varsity 10-speed when I was growing up. And I would ride out Foothill Road, which I called, the dead alley, and pick up everything dead I could find. And I brought it home on the back of a Schwinn Varsity 10-speed bike. And I skinned it. I took out the skeletons. I took things apart. This was in junior high school. And that's where it started, junior high school.
Wow. You had a love for biology and animals just from the get-go.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. My dad and I hunted my whole life. Went to college, got a degree in biology, started working for the Navy. I was a civilian. I wasn't in the Navy, but I was a civil service employee for the Navy for 36 years as a wildlife biologist. So, yeah, animals and wildlife and habitats, and it's just been my whole life. Absolutely.
When did you start picking up the very first needle and thread to start stitching them back up after you were taking them apart?
That was in high school. I took all the sciences in high school, and back then, this is 75, they wouldn't allow you to take classes at the junior college. So my senior year, there were no more science classes to take. So you took directed study science, which was basically you found a teacher, let you do whatever you want. So now I started bringing in the dead things to the high school, taking them apart, but I started mounting them, started putting them back together again.
Cool.
And that's where the taxidermy part started in high school.
So at what point did it turn into, hey, I could do this as a full-time job and I can make enough money off of this to pay the bills and run with it?
Well, it's, for me, being a biologist for the Navy came first. That was my full-time job. I did taxidermy on the side for my fun money, what we called fun money. It paid for my hunting trips, my camping gear, stuff like that.
Yep.
When I retired from the Navy 7 years ago, I'd been mounting ducks my whole life, but when I retired from the Navy and started doing ducks full time, it really took off. I never thought we'd be doing 150 ducks a year.
Wow.
But I am.
So
And
this leads into a lot of different questions because a lot of times the majority of taxidermy questions are always done around the concept of a shoulder mount of a deer.
right.
Everyone is like, when they think taxidermy, they think a deer shoulder mount where its head's turned, or maybe it's just straight ahead. You got the antlers and just kind of basic. But taxidermy can range from all sorts of different animals, all sorts of different sizes. And I think that's one of the things that as newer hunters go down this journey of like, do I even want taxidermy? Is it something that I want to put money into? In cultures around the world, there's the 3 deaths. There's the first time you realize you're mortal, the time that you actually physically die, and the third time is the last time anyone mentions your name. And I equate taxidermy to that quite often. It's a way to honor the life of the animal, and even though we may not name our animals, we know it, and we're constantly speaking about it and retelling the story and sharing that moment, and that animal gets to live on through these conversations. So is there any little bit of is there more to taxidermy for you than it is just the art of what it is?
I would say yes. I really enjoy the whole aspect of nature, getting out into nature and being able to bring a part of it home that has significance. I have my son's first deer here. Every time he comes home, he looks at it and we have pictures and we talk about that trip. That's going to happen for the rest of my life. I have a deer that here in my shop that was shot and mounted by my great uncle Henry in 1939.
Wow.
Now I remember him when I was a little boy. This brings back memories. This stuff brings floods of memories come back. If that deer head wasn't here, I wouldn't give a second thought to my great uncle Henry. But I do. It's very interesting. And you talk about different animals or different, what I call collections. Some people collect skulls. Some people collect the skin. Some collect live mounts. Some people collect, weird stuff. I have a friend who collects scat. And he's got quite the collection that's been used by researchers.
Wow.
It's amazing what in the wild, the things you can collect that mean things to people and not other people. Very interesting.
Yeah.
But when you shoot your first duck, you're going to remember that the rest of your life.
Totally.
And you and you have it, which makes it even more cool.
Yeah. So getting into hunting, I was like, okay, well, antlers. Antlers are cool. And a lot of times I think people who don't shoot animals that have antlers, or even anti-hunters or non-hunters, they don't understand like the fatuation with holding on to antlers. But the minute you shoot your first animal and you hold those and you're like, whoa, it's special.
Or even antler shed hunting is big. It's becoming more and more popular. And when you find that big shed antler, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a weird feeling, but yeah, it's very cool. Or when you get a set of antlers that aren't typical, they're non-typical. They're weird. They have drop tines. They have palmated antlers. Those are very cool too. And it's a very special thing. It really is.
Man, I love it. Okay, so here you are up on Whidbey Island in the north end of it, and I brought you my duck. Is waterfowl your specialty, or it is?
Waterfowl is my specialty. Probably 75% of the work I do are waterfowl, or let's say birds. I did 150 ducks last year, but I also do a lot of other birds. I've done birds for museums, for state parks, national parks, Forest Service. So we're talking owls, hawks. We're talking pelican. I did a white pelican. I've got a bald eagle right there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That I'm doing. It's mounted for the Jamestown tribe over on the peninsula. So I really enjoy birds. Ducks are great. I like doing ducks, but when you get to do something different, like a great horned owl, I say, well, how do you want it mounted? Well, they really don't know. So then it's my artistic talents that come in and say, well, let's mount it this way and make him look like he's Mr. Nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah, but birds, probably 75%. And then I do deer heads. I tan a lot of hides, like bear hides, bobcat, cougar. But I do a lot of live mounted animals, bobcats, raccoons, coyotes, beavers, river otters, even down to the weasels and the smaller stuff.
Yeah.
Live mounted. So yeah, I do the only thing I don't do is fish.
Oh, okay. Because that's a whole nother ball game.
It's a whole different art form. Yep.
Wild. We'll cross that bridge in a conversation at some point. There are some things what are the common things that people don't know about taxidermy? Like, for example, you shoot a turkey and you want to get a turkey mounted. How often do you actually get asked for the meat back? Or is it just a sacrifice to having the mount done? Or how does this go?
It depends how the bird arrives here. If the bird comes here cold, not frozen, and the customer wants the meat back, I will take the meat out right then and there. You got to get the measurements so you can get the body. But if it's just cold, it hasn't been frozen, I'll give them the meat back. If the bird is frozen, they don't get the meat back. Because I don't know how long it was after they shot it that it was frozen. Then it has to freeze. Then I'm going to thaw it out, refreeze it, and give it back to you. And that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what condition that meat's going to be in.
Makes total sense. So for people, because we're going to go through this, we're going to go birds, we're going to go big game, then we're going to go through pelts, and we're going to talk about these different things. If somebody wants to get a bird mounted, regardless of how to go about it, what are the steps, protocol for birds?
Well, bring me one that's not destroyed by a shotgun or your dog. Bring me one that's in good condition.
Okay.
My philosophy, I tell hunters, is if you shoot a duck and you're thinking about getting it mounted, look at the bird and say, how did it die? There's no broken wings. There's no part of the head missing. No half a wing missing. The dog didn't chew it up. It's in great shape in the field. That's the one you want to get mounted. Now, if you shoot your first duck or your son's first duck or daughter's first duck, your dog's first duck, your dog's last duck. I mean, these are the birds that come in, and it's got some problems with it. Bring it in, because we can either fix the problems, or we can hide them by mounting it a different way. If it's missing half a wing, we'll mount it standing. Then you don't see that missing wing.
Yeah.
But my rule of thumb is bring in birds that are in relatively good condition, and the mount will turn out really nice.
Preferably frozen or not frozen?
Preferably frozen as soon as possible.
And why is that?
Well, they start decomposing the minute they're shot. Especially if there's a lot of blood on them, blood on the skin. The beak and the feet start losing their color immediately. You want to get them frozen. If you shoot a bird like these hybrids they're getting now, we're getting these pintail mallard hybrids, pintail widgeon hybrids, mallard widgeon hybrids, really cool looking birds. And guys want to mount it. Well, those bills and feet are very different, odd colors. So what I tell people is photograph that bill and feet. The minute you shoot it, get us the true colors, and then get it frozen immediately.
Interesting.
And you'll keep the colors. That way, when we paint the birds, because what people don't understand, birds, as soon as they die, start losing the color in the beak and the feet immediately. When I mount the bird and it dries, it loses that color completely. A mallard's bill is black. We got to put that color back. So if you can get us a picture in the field of that bird in your hand of that true color, we can match it perfectly.
That's great to know.
Yeah, color goes quickly. It really does.
So I'm looking at my duck up on my wall that you
I can tell,
did.
yeah.
And I shot a pintail, and just beautiful. I didn't realize the beauty in ducks until I went duck hunting. And I think that's one of the things that, speaking for pro hunting, is a lot of people don't realize how special and majestic these animals are, regardless of whether it's a bird or a mammal or a four-legged critter or whatever, is when you get to put your hands on them, it changes everything. You're like, whoa.
When you look at waterfowl, let's say, or an owl or anything, even an eagle, like the one I've got mounted back here. When you look there with them with binoculars, a spotting scope, they're pretty majestic, pretty amazing. But when you get an animal in your hand, or you put an animal in a kid's hand, everything changes. Because now you're seeing textures, you're seeing colors you didn't see hundreds of yards away. You're seeing patterns. You're seeing, it's just, you can just watch their minds open up saying, look at this, look at the feet, look at the beak. It's amazing how this broadens the horizons. It really does.
Right. I was totally against waterfowl taxidermy. Not for other people, but just for myself. I was like, why would I ever want to get a duck mounted? But when I held my pintail and I saw that black and white pattern that they have off their back of the neck.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. I was like, this is gorgeous.
Yeah, people don't see, for example, on a pintail, above and through the eye is purple.
Right.
You don't see that unless you've got that in your hand. It's beautiful, that magenta. You don't see that.
Yeah. So incredible. Okay, so when it comes to waterfowl taxidermy, I know that, like with big game animals that you have on a wall, out in a shop or in a store, all these things, they don't get dusted very often, but they're supposed to. And I feel like waterfowl just can look like garbage very quickly.
They are dust magnets. All taxidermy projects are dust magnets, and they have to be cleaned at least a couple times a year. And it's as easy as just a damp cloth and just wipe them down. Don't vacuum them. Don't hit them with Windex or any of that 409 stuff. Just a soft, damp cloth and just wipe them down, and they're done.
That's great to
Yeah.
know. Okay.
Crazy, but they get dusty really quick.
Yeah, really quick.
And for deer, the same way. Wipe the antlers down, wipe the cape down, get a Q-tip, clean out the eyes and the nostrils, just with damp cloth or a moist Q-tip. Don't go squirting water on them.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of those detail places, even the antlers can be painted or
Yes.
or glossed, or I don't.
Yeah.
Go.
You can put stuff on. We don't. I don't.
Yeah.
When you take the antlers off the skull and you've got them hanging there, I scrub them. I mean, scrub all that. Now, I get them clean if there's any blood or just dirt. But down at the base of these antlers, where these animals have been scratching on trees and rubbing on trees, there's bark down in there and there's grunge down in there. I leave that.
Mm.
That's part of the story.
Right.
And I leave as much of that as I can. It's the story. It's very cool.
Well, before we get into the big game, and not to put you on the spot like this, but I think this is one of the biggest things when it comes to taxidermy. What is a standard price or relative range for a waterfowl mount?
For a pintail mallard size, it's $400.
Okay.
For a teal, bufflehead, hooded merganser, small ducks, it's $350. And that's really based on time. How long is it going to take me to do this? And people, let me go over it real quick. They bring in the bird. I have to skin it. I have to defat it. That takes time. Then you have to wash it, dry it, mount it. The bird dries, then you paint it. So by the time you're done with a pintail like yours, that's 18 hours.
Wow.
So you've got all this time invested in this. Now, you also got to realize when you skin a duck, what I tell people is you've got to, the fat stays on the skin when you skin it. You got to take the body out, but there can be up to a 1/4 inch of fat on that skin. That has to come off.
Mm.
Otherwise it goes rancid. So a lot of people use it's a wire brush it's a wire brush that spins and you burn it off. And I don't like that because it pulls the pin feathers out. So I just use a real sharp pair of scissors, the old-fashioned way. Takes a little longer, but I can get it all. Then you got to get a wire brush in between those feather tracks and work all that fat out. And you're doing this basically on a wet paper towel. That's how easy it wants to tear.
It's crazy.
So when people say, well, how come it's $400? I said, you don't understand the detail and this, how sensitive that skin is. It wants to, you look at it, it wants to tear.
Yeah.
So you gotta, what I call be in the zone. I turn on my bluegrass music. I get in the zone. The dog's laying there snoring, and I'll get in the zone and I can get a duck skinned and not put a hole in it. And if I can do that, I've done my job.
That is so cool. Okay. So if you are putting a hole in it, you have to get out the needle and thread and just start stitching
Gotta sew it up. Now, imagine sewing up a wet paper towel. They don't like to be sewn, but you have to do it.
And then you have to worry about what the feather pattern on the back also, because if you're pulling the skin in any specific.
Well, once you get it mounted, it's called what I call primping. You got to go through on those feather tracks and primp every feather, because if they're overlapping, they don't look right. You got to get them to fit. You got to primp that whole bird, the whole bird. It takes time.
No.
But then the finished project, you look at it, you go, God, that looks great.
Well, no wonder it's a dying art then, because people nowadays are not very patient. I feel like everyone wants, instant gratification.
Yeah, Johnny, I have everyone who comes in here, when they bring in their kids, I talk to them and they go, oh, this is cool. And I tell them how I do it and what I do. And they look at me like I've got a third eye, because this is needle and thread scalpel, very precise, very, very precise work. And kids nowadays don't want to do that.
Right.
And there are no computers involved. There's no mouse. There's no iPad. There's no laptop. There's none of that. It's a scalpel. It's needle and thread, and it's that art. But for me, it's the artistic part of it. You like I mounted a blue-winged teal today, and I mounted it and I thought, well, let's make this one look really cool. So I mounted in preening. I mean, the one wing's outstretched, the head's back, that beak is dug down into those feathers, and it just, and I keep tweaking it, going, God, this thing really looks cool. And it's just, it's what I like to do. It's fun. But kids they don't, and then when you talk about, well, how long did it take to learn to do this? It took me 20 years.
Right.
And they look at me like, whoa, I don't want to do that. That's way too long.
You're living an analog life in a digital world.
Oh, yeah. You're not kidding. You're not kidding. I mean, kids, well, I can stuff one. I'll learn in a day. No, you won't. Most people do internships. There are a few taxidermy schools, like Rick mentioned, at Cedar Creek. There are taxidermy schools you can go to and learn this. But you learn the basics. To learn the precision, to learn the art form, that takes years. I tell these, one young Navy guy up here is interested. He's from Tennessee. He has skinned some birds before. He wants to come in this fall and watch me skin some birds. I said, the best thing to do right now is just come in and watch me do a couple of birds. Then we'll shoot you some ducks, and I'll give you a dozen ducks, and I want you to destroy them. Because that's what you're going to do. Don't think your first bird is going to be quality stuff. It's not. It's going to look like crap. So I said, just destroy them. And when you destroy the bird, go, oh my God, throw it away and get another one. You're going to go through a lot of birds before you even get close to getting it right. Birds are the hardest thing to mount by far. Hands down. A deer head, piece of cake. Anyone can do it. Anyone. Live mounting a raccoon, piece of cake. Anyone can do it. Mounting a Canada goose, forget it. Get it.
Yeah, you don't see a whole lot of bad taxidermy when it comes to waterfowl. I feel like if you mess up on a waterfowl, you're just like, trash can.
Yeah, unless it's a customer's bird.
You're right.
and he says, this was my dog's last retrieve. There's a little bit of pressure on you to make it look really good and not screw it up.
Right. Yeah, and you're dealing with a lot of emotional people. Yeah, I DJ weddings on the side as my fun money.
And, good.
Yeah, so everyone's got to have a part-time job, right? And
so it pays for this thing called the hunting addiction.
Ain't that true? That true? Well, I'll tell you, when you don't get a first dance back, you don't get a kiss the bride back.
No, you don't.
An introduction of Mr. and Mrs. and all these different moments. The pressure's on. As simple as maybe pushing play is and fading in and out is, there was a wedding that I think I said the name wrong one time. Not like totally wrong, but people have a hard time pronouncing it. It was a guy. He was African from Africa, and his bride, they met here, and I had the hardest time pronouncing the name.
Yeah,
phonetically wrote it out, all sorts of stuff. And someone came up to me and they're like, "You didn't say his name right." I'm like, "Oh crap!" I truly and sincerely apologize, but it was one of those ones where, when I met with the bride and groom, he's like, "Yeah, don't worry about it."
Everyone screws it up.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay, so here we are, birds.
Yeah.
Is the bone structure in these birds at all, or is it just
okay?
So what's in there?
Here's the process, real quick. You bring in a bird, I take the skin off. You never see the guts. Ever. It's like getting a Cornish game hen with the guts in it. and I take that out. You take the neck out. Now, there's quite a few taxidermists now that part of mounting birds is the skull and the feet. The skull is very hard to clean. So people are using fake heads and fake bills. They're also using fake feet.
Mm.
You can buy fake duck feet and put them on there. People actually call me and ask me, do I use the real head and feet? And the answer is yes, I do. They don't want fake on their birds.
Right.
They want the real bird. They want the whole real bird. So you have to take and clean that skull. You got to clean those legs and feet. You got to clean the wings, clear out to the wingtip. The only bones left in a bird when I mount it is the skull, the wing bones from the shoulder to the wingtip, and from the bone from the knee down to the foot. That's it. The rest is, I make the body, I wire it up, you add cotton, you add clay in the right places. And
that is insanely wild. That
it's a lot of work, but I've done so many. Thousands of birds, literally thousands. And it's to the point now where I'm pretty damn quick.
Yeah.
And I know where to pull and where not to pull. I know where to cut and where not to cut. And I can get through a duck, skin it pretty quick.
That's cool. I love it. Okay, so let's talk about cuts for a second, and let's move into the big game animals and all that. I destroyed my back paws on my bear.
A lot of people do.
A lot of people do. It is, you think you're like, oh, just follow this line, you're good to go. And then all of a sudden it twists and you're on the front of the paw and you're like, oh my goodness.
Then I get to fix it.
Exactly. Good thing is that I only soft hand it, so it wasn't full on laid out rug.
Oh, okay.
I could care less whether I twisted it up or not. However, when it comes to, and let's go bear, and then let's go to antlered animals, and then we'll go into the fur bearers and all that. When it comes to bears, is it best to just like gut it out and bring it to you as whole as possible, if possible, or is it what?
Well, what I like people to do is skin the bear in the field and get that meat out of it, because you want to utilize the bear.
Mm-hmm.
You want to utilize the meat. Split him up the front, up to the center of his chest, and then go down each leg to the center of the paw, and then cut it off at the wrist.
Mm.
Leave the paw intact. Let me skin out the paws. And then take the neck and turn it inside out like a sock up to the base of the skull,
mm-hmm.
and cut the head off. Let me skin out the head. This is where people mess up. And then you got to do repair work. I don't know how, everyone's good at repair work, but it's best if it's not there.
Right.
Now, the other thing, in fact, yesterday and today, I got calls from guys that have their bears. They want the hides tanned. And they said, I've got my bear hide, I've got it salted, and I've got it in the freezer. And I said, I won't take it.
Mm.
Don't salt the hides. Don't ever, ever salt the hides.
Even if you're not going to be bringing it to a taxidermist for quite some time?
Yes. And here's the reason why. If you're going to salt it, you have to cleanse the hide. You have to get all the meat, all the fat, all that connective tissue off, down to the hair follicle. Then you salt it. What the salt does is it fixes the hair follicle so the hair doesn't fall out.
Ah.
If you got a bear hide laying there with an inch of fat and meat chunks on it, and you throw a bunch of salt on it, you just salted the fat. It'll never get to the hair. Then what they do is they roll it up and throw it in the freezer. Well, when you got a 300-pound bear hide that's rolled up full of salt and you throw it in the freezer, it won't freeze for days. Because what does salt do? Prevents freezing. So now your hide's rotting in your freezer. So if they tell me they've salted something, I say, I won't take it.
So
because then when it goes bad, it's my fault.
Right. Okay, so something that's probably generally asked, often. When folding up a bear hide or any hide for that matter,
Yeah.
is it skin to skin, fur to fur, fur to skin?
It really doesn't matter as long as whoever's thawing it out doesn't force it. If it's fur on skin and they force it, they're going to tear the hair. And I tell people, don't roll it up in a ball and put it in a big trash bag so it's just a big ball. You got to remember, the center of that ball is not going to freeze for a long time. So what I tell people is lay the bear skin out flat, roll it up like you're rolling up a carpet so it's long and skinny. Then bag it and lay it in your freezer. So you've got more surface area to freeze faster.
That makes sense.
That's what I tell people. Yeah, if it's more surface area, it freezes faster.
What is the longest that animal or a hide has been in a freezer before someone brought it to you? Is it like, hey, I shot this beer?
I had a guy call me from down in Seattle. His thing is quail. That's his life, is quail hunting. He goes all over the world quail hunting. And he has all the different species of quail from North America. And he wants them all mounted. So he sent them to me frozen. Some of them have been in the freezer for 5 years. I couldn't mount them. Their freezer burned so bad, they were like leather. So I couldn't mount them. Birds, if they're wrapped really well, and I mean like 5 or 6, 7, 8 layers of plastic and taped up so there's no airflow, they'll last 2 years. If they're wrapped really well. A deer hide, maybe a year. Maybe a year. Again, it depends how it was frozen to begin with. The rule of thumb is if you want something mounted, get it to the taxidermist as soon as possible.
So I killed my first animal 4 years ago. So this process of...
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, getting a podcast going and all these different things that I'm doing, I'm still super new. And so I remember like on forums or asking people, they're like, got to line up your taxidermist first. You got to line up your taxidermist first. I'm like, okay, well,
that's
not
a bad idea.
So how do I find taxidermists? How do I find a good taxidermist? How do I go? Like, I'm trapping bobcats this winter. That is my goal.
Okay.
I want a bobcat pelt like none other. And that's my go-to. So do I take it to any random taxidermist or, but it has to be sealed by the state. So what's the process in this? Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful.
If you want to find a good taxidermist, it's really word of mouth. You can go online, you can go on websites, and you get all the ratings in the world. But it's word of mouth. It really is. Start calling your buddies who have had it done. Ask them who they went to. Did they like them? Did they do a good job? What's the turnaround time? Ask the appropriate questions.
Yeah.
If somebody says you won't get your animal back for 2 years, don't go there. There's a good chance they're not doing the animal, they're contracting it out.
Yeah.
And so you're paying for something they're not doing.
So contracting out, are you tanning the hides that come to you, or do you ship them off to?
I do not. I do not. I don't want all. It's a big process. I don't tan. I'll probably do 30 a year from cows. I mean, I'll cleanse your cow hides down to bobcats, down to coyotes. I send them to a tannery in Idaho.
Gotcha.
I don't want to deal with the chemicals here. And when you can send a coyote hide to a tannery in Idaho, and for $28, it comes back perfect. It's not worth my time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially since I don't do that many.
Bang for your buck. You gotta like weigh off.
Yeah. It's time, effort. Do I want to have all the chemicals here? No, for $28? No, I'll cleanse your coyote, I'll salt it, I'll ship it.
Perfect.
And they come back perfect.
Have you ever brain tanned anything?
Funny you should ask. When I was in high school, I tried tanning. Now I'm aging myself here, but there was no internet. There were no VHS tapes. We had a book. I had a book from the Northwestern School of Taxidermy. I still have it here somewhere. And it described this method of tanning using sulfuric acid. Well, back then, I could go down to the drugstore and buy a bottle of sulfuric acid.
Huh.
So I did. But I hadn't had chemistry yet, so I didn't understand what molarity meant. How powerful this stuff was. So I stretched out. I had a coyote I found dead on Foothill Road. I stretched it out. I flensed it. I did what I thought what the book said to do and mixed this acid with stuff, and I painted it on the hide and came back the next day and the hide was gone.
Just straight disintegrated.
It ate it. It disintegrated the hide. I went, well, that's not going to work. I don't tan things, especially if it's somebody's prize animal. I don't want to do it, not unless I've done it for years and I'm really good at it.
Right.
Donnie, I'm good at birds, not tanning.
That's so funny. Here's what the mysteries of the world that aren't taught. How did someone figure out the way to brain tan?
Those were the Native Americans that figured that out.
Isn't that incredible?
It is unbelievable, and it works. I've never tried it, but it works.
The knowledge in which people do not hold anymore is staggering.
Can you imagine flensing a bison hide with chips of obsidian? I use a scalpel that's sharper than heck.
Yeah.
They did a whole bison hide, then they brain tanned it, and they turned out beautiful.
What is it? Many hands make light work or something like that. Saying,
Yes. Yep.
It's got to be where it takes a village, because one person with an obsidian rock carving away at the fat, it's got to take forever.
Oh, I've done bison hides. They are not easy to flens, not easy at all. Number one, you've got a hide that weighs 400 pounds. Moving it across the table is a workout. Oh, man.
One of the heaviest pack outs that I've had was when this bull elk that's sitting behind me.
I see it, yeah.
Oh, beautiful. That's Rick's work. He did a great job on that.
Yeah.
After I shot it and I just packed the head and the cape back.
Oh, God.
Oh, that wore me down.
You're talking over 200 pounds.
Yeah.
Easily, 250.
Oh, man. And we were pretty generous on the cape, like knowing that this was getting mounted.
Well, now that brings up a good point. If you're going to bring something in and you're going to have a shoulder mount, where to cut? And a lot of people cut the capes too short. I mean, look at yours. The whole front end of that elk is there.
Right.
I tell people I want half the rib cage forward.
Wow. That's a lot of skin,
Well, it gives us skin to work with.
Right.
If you cut it short, then we're really stretching it, and you lose certain features when you start stretching that hide to what I call make it fit. You don't want to make it fit.
It's like the old mounts where it's just a head and like 4 inches of neck coming off the wall.
Yes.
It just doesn't look as good.
And people have given me that. And I can't do it.
Yeah.
So if it's a deer, like our little black-tailed deer, I said, I want the whole skin. I want the whole thing. I want the tail on the end of that thing. Then I can cut it to fit.
Yeah. So so rule of thumb is cutting behind the front shoulder.
I want half the rib cage.
Circle it up.
That's the rule of thumb. Half the rib cage forward. Yep.
That is something that is not taught. When everyone's like, "Oh,
No.
how do you learn how to hunt?" All this stuff, and it's like, "Oh, now I want to mount it."
Well, the thing is Rick and I are the guys that get these things, and we're going, it's too short. So you start educating people. People are calling me, like you said earlier, call your taxidermist before you go. And the first thing I tell people is, a lot of these are bear hunters. I'm going to go bear hunting. Okay. If you get a bear, when you skin it as clean as you can, because you want that hide to cool down as fast as you can. Mm. The more meat and fat you get off, the faster that hide's going to cool down. So you want to get that done. And then I say, bring me the entire hide.
Yeah.
Let me make the cuts.
It's a lot of work. And the thing is not knowing whether or not you want to even get art done. Like, you kind of have to make up your mind before you go hunting. Yeah. Like, okay, I'm gonna pay for this. I'm gonna do this. What is it?
Well, because if you've got to pack it out, you better decide early on whether you're going and figure out how you're going to get that out, how you're going to get it cooled down. There's a lot of pre-planning.
Right. What does the average bear rug cost? Like an actual rug, not just a soft tan.
Well, I'm not doing rugs anymore. I just don't have the time. I will tan your bear hide. I will have it tanned. This year, I'm doing a lot of bears. I'm getting the hides tanned and I'm mounting the head. Mm. Now, I do that. You can get it rugged next year. You can get it rugged 5 years from now. It's ready to go. It's just, I don't have the time.
Yeah.
I just don't have the time. We're getting inundated with birds because no one's doing birds anymore. No one. Rick's not doing birds.
Right.
The guys north of me in Anacortes and Bellingham, they're not doing birds anymore. It's just not their thing.
And you're in the Pacific Flyway, which means there's so many birds that need to be done.
Here's a little tidbit for the listeners out there. There are 23 species of waterfowl, 23 different species of waterfowl that you can hunt on or around Whidbey, Fidalgo, Skagit Flats.
Wow.
That happens nowhere else in the country because we get all the divers, all the puddle ducks. We get the birds, we get the Eurasian widgeon that comes over from Japan, We get some of the eiders down from the Arctic. 23 species of waterfowl right here. That you can't do that anywhere else in the country. This is a waterfowl mecca right here.
So the follow-up question is, have you mounted all 23?
Almost. Now, the goal for me is to have all 23 in here in the shop. That would be very cool because I know nobody has that. But there are a couple of guys up here in the Northwest who want all of them. And we're working, they send me 2 or 3 a year. They're going to get them. They're going to get them.
That is so cool. I love hearing that. Okay, so you're not doing bear rugs anymore. Yeah, waterfowl, there's 23 locally that you can get between divers, puddle ducks, and all this. Yep. What about big game animals? What is a typical cost for a shoulder mount?
Any deer, whitetail, blacktail, muley, is $450.
That's a great deal.
No, it is. I mean, I don't do that. Let me see. I check my notes here. I did 25 deer heads this year.
Wow.
Mostly blacktail from right here on Whidbey Island. We have some beautiful big blacktail, which you and I are going to talk about later.
Yep.
But we have some beautiful deer here on the island. And it's all about time. How much time is this going to take me?
Right.
So it's $450, $500 right in there.
That's not too bad. And then when someone pays a taxidermist, is it half down up front? What's the protocol?
We ask for 50% deposit.
Yeah.
And it makes, when you come back to pay the balance, it makes the bite a little less.
Right.
That's how I describe it. But we want to make sure people come back. Now, we've only been stiffed a couple of times in 20 years. And it's never a deer. It's never a bear or a bobcat, because those are really special to people. But sometimes when you get a guy turns in a duck, sometimes they don't come back. So they're what I call the wall of shame back here. They become a display piece. So now we ask for a 50% deposit, gives them a little more incentive to come back and get the bird.
Right. Makes total.
But we haven't been. I think we've been stiffed twice in 20 years. So hunters they're good guys. They're good people.
I like to think so. The salt of the earth.
Yeah.
Even though people get a little heady at times, or we have our issues as human beings, but traditionally hunters are quality individuals.
You know what? They really are, because I see grandpas, dads, and their sons and grandsons come in here. I see 3 generations walk in the door. And hunting is part of their lifestyle. It's what they do. And I'm very impressed. These young kids that are getting into hunting, they've got their act together. They've gone through hunter's ed. They know the safety rules. They know the protocols. They know when they go out in the field, how to take care of things, how to take care of the environment, how to, these kids are learning this. It's a different, you can tell these kids they've got it. They've got it. They know what to do. It's very, very impressive. Very impressive, these kids.
It's so special. So I didn't start hunting until my 30s, but I had the opportunity today. I told my wife, I was like, why don't you put the youngest down for a nap and have some time to yourself? I'm going to take the older 2, who are only 4 and 6 years old. So, they're a wild bunch. And I was like, let's go look for a black bear. And so we went locally up to a berry patch that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
Saw a ton of bear poop, and I'm like, all right, all right, guys, look, this is a small bear, this is a big bear, and they want to get excited and get loud and all this stuff, and they did such a phenomenal job. We didn't see any bears, but on the way out, I was like, we're still hunting, even though we're heading back to the car, we're still hunting. And then all of a sudden, we spotted some deer, and I was like, okay, this is exactly why, we take it slow, we go gently, and they're like, oh, it's so cool. I was like, and then come back here in a month.
Wow.
We can go shoot them. So it is fun investing in the next generation. The slogan of mentorship is conservation is huge. It's true. Just, you never know how you're going to impact and change someone's life just by showing them the outdoors.
Yeah, I have a friend who's he's my son's best friend, and his little boy's 11. And the dad doesn't hunt at all, but this little boy is really into trap and skeet shooting. And so I took him duck hunting last year, and we took him down to the marsh down here. And I told him, I said, okay, Brian, he's 11. I said, when those mallards come in, you get to shoot first, but if you miss, I said, I'm going to take him. And this flock of mallard comes in. This little kid opens up that little layout blind, and little mighty 20 gauge, wham, he whacks that mallard, drops dead. My dog makes the perfect retrieve, and I went, holy crap, this guy can really shoot. He's 11, but he gets it. This little kid gets what hunting is. It's just amazing to watch these young people.
Yeah, so incredible.
I'm taking them again this year.
That's awesome. I love it. Okay, so Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, if this 11-year-old can get up at 4:30 in the morning on his own and meet me out at the gate with his shotgun and his stuff, I'll take him.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, just wrapping this up, what questions, as far as taxidermy goes, that I did not ask, that I am not even touching?
One thing I want to cover is, especially for birds, or really any animal, but particularly birds, since that's what I do. If you got a duck and you shoot it and the dog makes a retrieve and you think, yeah, I want to get this thing mounted, there's a few rules to take care of it. Wrap it up in take a towel with you, like a little dish towel, wrap it up, get it, protect the feathers. You can put the head under the wing, roll it up in a towel and stick it in your pack or whatever. And as soon as you get home, don't putting it in a nylon sock is fine in the field. That's good. When you get home, don't put it in a vacuum sealer. That pattern on the plastic will vacuum seal itself onto the feathers. Very hard to get out. Don't worry about any blood or mud. That's my job. The birds get washed. Just take care of it in the field. Don't wring its neck.
That's what I was going to ask is, what about the stretched out necks?
Don't hang it from one of those duck hanger things in the blind and let the dog sniff it, and wrap it up in a towel. Treat it like it's gold. Get it home. Wrap it up in 10 layers of plastic or newspaper, plastic, alternate, whatever. Wrap it up so it's nice and sealed. Tape it up real well. Get it in the freezer as soon as you can. Then get it to me as soon as you can. Don't leave it in the freezer to the end of the season.
Okay. That's great advice. Great advice. Anything else we're missing?
I don't think so. I've got all my notes here. Oh, one other thing. I started doing crabs last year. The big 9.5-inch Dungeness crabs. I did some snow crabs for a crabbing boat in Alaska. These crabs turn out beautiful.
Wow.
People don't think about getting crabs mounted. They are amazing. Absolutely amazing. So don't forget the crabs.
That's awesome. I will say walking up into your shop is quite an experience all by itself. It's like a natural history museum.
It is. Oh, I've done that on purpose for the kids.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants to come by and I'm always looking for someone to talk to while I'm skinning a duck. Always.
I love it, Matt. Okay, so what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Just go. We have a website, Whidbey Island Taxidermy. Phone number's there, address is there. Give me a buzz. I'd love to talk to you. Anybody about anything.
Perfect.
Just like we're doing.
I love it. Well, listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. Matt is the man when it comes to waterfowl. I have it proven on my wall just to my right now as I'm looking at it. And if you have any taxidermy questions, he is, as you can tell just through this episode, just an amazing individual and a wonderful advocate and ambassador for hunting and the outdoor lifestyle. So, Matthew, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your knowledge, your insight. And we'll make sure to put your web address and everything in the show notes for people to be able to get a hold of you. And thank you so much. Yeah, how many animals you got coming at you already this fall?
Oh, we've already got the bears are coming in. Turkeys, they've already come in. We're trying to get them out of here. Deer heads are right around the corner. And then the ducks start coming. I mean, and they just keep coming. Great. I love it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, well, listeners, if you are looking to get some taxidermy work, do not hesitate. Reach out to Matthew at Whidbey Island Taxidermy, and that's WhidbeyIslandTaxidermy.com for all your questions, your insight for that. Go check them out. Thank you for tuning into this episode. If you guys have more questions or you have things that you feel were not covered completely on this episode, please feel free to reach out to us. We want to make sure we do all this for you. And everyone, be blessed. Good luck this hunting season. Can't wait to see what you drop in the field. Tag us with Soulful Hunter. And as always, everybody, freedom on and stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast, I'd love it if you could go ahead and give this a rating as well as subscribe. Also, you can check us out on Instagram under the Soulful Hunter Podcast. Make sure to tag us in pictures and posts and use the hashtag Soulful Hunter. To find out more about the Soulful Hunter podcast, go to soulfulhunter.com and be sure to follow the podcast as we are going to be bringing you a lot of great information, insight, and changing lives through primal adventure. I look forward to connecting with you on the next episode. Stay tuned and stay soulful.